It felt like being in prison.
He started telling me to hurt myself and taunting me for not hurting myself badly enough.
He eventually got me hooked onto heroin.
It wasn't until our father had killed our mum and sister that we actually realised just how dangerous control is.
Coercive control is an insidious form of abuse.
You're actually going to wear that?
For too long, it has gone unnoticed, and it can ruin lives. For many victims, it is an isolating secret they bear alone.
Who are you talking to?
I'm not talking to anyone, I'm just doing
Yeah,
my video.
you're lying.
I'm not, I'm
No, I
doing my
told you
video.
not to talk to people.
Coercive control is a subtle form of abuse. The survivor may not even recognise it as abusive. It's a repeated pattern of behaviours, stripping away a survivor's self-esteem, and it can increase the isolation of the survivor in that relationship.
What's really important for people to understand is that they may not even recognise that they are actually a victim of domestic abuse.
A Mumsnet survey said 38% of women have been in an abusive or controlling relationship, with 6 in 10 saying they suspected a friend or family member was in one. Sadie is one of them. She entered into an arranged marriage at 19.
It started off with language, then it started off with how I was walking and talking. If I sat down, you don't sit down like that, you need to sit down slower than this. How you stand, you don't stand like that. I'm an educated man, you need to stand like this. And then it went on to who I was going to meet and whether I should be in contact with them. The clothes that I wore, I didn't buy my clothes, he bought all of my clothes. I knew it was wrong, I went for the phone, and this time he threatened to kill me. He said I was going to bring shame on my father. That was the last thing I wanted. My father was my life. It's hard because you don't have anywhere to turn to. And when you don't have any support, then you start believing that there is something wrong with you, that you are at fault, that you are making this happen. It's your fault that he's angry. It's your fault that he's violent. So, yeah, it was really lonely. It was really lonely, yeah.
Mumsnet found 24% of the victims of domestic abuse never said anything to anyone about what they were going through.
Perpetrators are very clever. It's like a drip, drip, drip effect. Over time, your own perception of reality is diminished.
Clo was 13 when she met her partner.
I met my boyfriend on Twitter, online. I don't know, I don't think I thought something wasn't right for like a really long time. Like it took such long, because things built up so gradually. Like each thing I was just like, well, it's just another little thing. I think looking back, there were signs from the very beginning that something wasn't right. He could go from being, like, he'd be really lovely when we met, and then in between he'd be really, really unpleasant. I think, like, there were lots of little things he did that were quite controlling. Like, he could, like, lose his temper over maybe just, like, me liking the wrong Facebook page, or, like, he'd tell me, like, he liked girls to dress a certain way. Like, he'd say, oh, I only find girls attractive if they wear, like, short dresses and, like, low tops and that kind of thing. And then if I dressed like that when I was with him, afterwards he'd, like, shout at me for being a slag and a slut. I was constantly, like, monitoring my behaviour and trying to think, like, what have I done to make him think this, and what can I do to make him, like, stop getting angry? What am I doing wrong? And he started, like, self-harming and saying he stashed pills for an overdose, and he said he was going to kill himself, but that if I told anyone, he'd do it straight away and it would be all my fault. So It's all just a way to kind of keep control over you and to have some kind of power, I guess.
In some cases, abusers use addiction to control their partners.
We were really good friends at first. I really thought this man was the one. Progressively things got worse. He would want to know where I was all the time. The niggling in the ear, my family were no good. Eventually, I ended up with him and me. He would always say, it doesn't matter, it's me and you against the world. You're my world, it's me and you against the world. He used to drink an awful lot, but he used to take drugs as well. And he eventually got me hooked onto heroin. I remember the first day he came home with heroin. He said, just try it. And I got very, very sick. And he said, don't worry about the sickness, keep doing it, you'll get over the sickness. And within a month, I was hooked, literally hooked. And then, of course, by then, he had every bit of control over my life. And my life, and his life, literally spiraled out of control.
Under legislation introduced in 2015, coercive control became a crime. The law defines coercive control as an act or a pattern of acts of assault, threats, humiliation and intimidation or other abuse that is used to harm, punish or frighten their victim. Controlling behaviour is a range of acts designed to make a person subordinate and or dependent by isolating them from sources of support, exploiting their resources and capacities for personal gain, depriving them of the means needed for independence, resistance and escape, and regulating their everyday behaviour. It is currently punishable by a maximum sentence of 5 years jail time, although sentences are often much less.
Coercive and controlling behaviour was criminalised nearly 3 years ago, but it continues to be a largely misunderstood and underreported offence. 1.2 million women experienced domestic abuse last year alone, yet the convictions in the last year or two have been a handful, around 300.
While controlling behaviour is a serious offence, it can often be the first step towards a much more serious crime, as Ryan and Luke Hart know all too well.
Domestic abuse costs lives. The Hart brothers are making such a difference because by talking about the coercive and controlling behaviour of their father, who ultimately exercised total control, they're explaining the dangers of coercive and controlling behaviour and how seriously we have to take it in our society.
So on the 19th of July 2016, my mum and my sister met up with our dad to exchange documents and to start to formalise a divorce. They met in a swimming pool car park in Spalding. Our father was there with a sawn-off shotgun and he killed them both in cold blood that morning.
The thing that we realised retrospectively was that control is abuse, and we'd never considered that. As young children, we grew up with our father setting boundaries for us, and we perceived that they were natural. Our father knew to control a woman, you create dependency. It wasn't until our father had killed our mum and sister that we actually realised just how dangerous control is. When we looked back over our father's behaviours, it became clear that every single one of them was designed to restrict our lives. And actually, he'd got to the point where he'd almost forced us to leave because we had so little life left with him. And that in itself is indicative of the danger, I think.
The important thing to know about coercive control and domestic abuse is that the perpetrator behaves differently to the victims than he does the general public and the family, friends and outside of the home. Our father was completely different when we had friends over than when we were alone at home.
The control was put in place before we were ever in any way conscious of what was going on.
Many of the stories follow a chillingly similar pattern.
It was fine for the first 12 months, 18 months.
It started off as one little thing and then got bigger and bigger.
Whatever I did, however hard I tried to monitor everything I said to him, every way I behaved around him, he'd always find another reason to get angry.
In an abusive relationship, it's all about an imbalance of power and control, and the perpetrator has that control over the victim. So the difficulties for a victim of domestic abuse is even recognising that they're being abused in the first place.
I started to notice that my friends were disappearing.
He made it difficult for me to have other friends and to talk to other people because I felt like I needed to sort of reply to his messages all the time.
He never rang me and said, "Hi, how are you?" The first words would be, "Where are you? What are you doing?" And I'd show him. And it got to the stage where I would automatically show him on the phone where I was.
I wasn't allowed to go near a phone. I wasn't allowed to go to the bathroom.
But at the time, it was my first relationship, and I just thought, well, maybe this is what it's supposed to be like.
You don't think anything. I just thought this was what marriage was.
When someone's controlling like that, they're doing it to have power over you and to control you, and it does just get gradually worse and worse.
Slow poisoning is a good way to describe coercive control. It's not a one-off incident, it's a repeated pattern of behaviours designed to isolate, intimidate, control and frighten your partner.
The control with him was the look. He didn't have to say anything. If I saw the look, I would be on eggshells.
And I just thought, this is my life, this is what I have to do, I have to deal with it the best way I can. I just sat and spoke to myself to tell myself that something good was going to come out of this.
Leaving an abusive relationship can be complex, but talking to someone is the first step.
Nobody should be frightened of their partner. If you're frightened of your partner and you're worried even about talking to somebody for fear of what they might do or think of you, then try to find the courage to speak to somebody about it. The National Domestic Violence Helpline is always there for you. If you are worried about your own life or your safety or that of another person in your life, the emergency services are there for you, and you should always feel you can go to the police if that's what you wish to do.
We've had a lot of training now in this area, so that we're, I think, a lot better in recognising the victim's concerns and worries about coming forward and speaking to us.
I drove to the police station. I just snapped. I thought, I can't do this anymore. Sat outside the police station crying, which I'd done on numerous occasions before and hadn't had the strength to walk in. But this time I knew it was over, and I knew I had to do something about it. So I walked into the police station, asked for help. 2 amazing police officers from domestic abuse unit came down to see me. 7.5 hours later, I came out of the police station. After I'd spilled, once I started talking to them, I couldn't stop. Everything came out. And it was like such a relief. Such a relief.
It can be hard to spot from the outside, but people should be aware of the danger signs.
Every relationship is different and every abusive relationship is different, but some of the warning signs could be perhaps your friend or family member is becoming isolated, withdrawn. It looks as though they're being prevented by their partner for seeing friends or family. Perhaps they're mentioning that their moves are being monitored by their partner on social media and the phone. Most importantly of all, they may report feeling frightened by what their partner's doing or threatening to do to them.
Perpetrators of coercive controlling behaviour are very clever at manipulating situations so that the victim feels like their behaviour and their family life and their relationship is normal, when clearly it isn't.
It's so important that all of us have a little bit of knowledge and confidence so that if somebody opens up to us about their abusive relationship, we know to listen to them, believe them and support them.
We need to empower people to know that this isn't right in any format, and we need to get people to speak up, to stand out and to take action.
Please, please be brave and get help. There is help out there. There really is help out there. And people do understand.
It should be taken as seriously as all forms of abuse, and there should be more help out there for people, more awareness about it, and it shouldn't be something that we tolerate in society at all.
It's the most difficult thing to admit that you're in that sort of relationship. But take that step and be brave, and it is be brave.
Call the domestic abuse helpline and explain to them and let them make a judgment.
You have one life and you have the right to live it in the best possible way, and that you have to be happy and that you should be happy and you have a right to be happy and you have a right to be safe.
Help is available. Don't suffer in silence.